Good day to you, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Film Focus, episode 189, the review for Captain America Brave New World. Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen of the North, South, East, and West, and welcome to another episode of Film Focus. I'm your host, the Hypersonic55, and I'm glad that you decided to join me once again for some film-related discussion. And today, I'm bringing you my thoughts on Captain America Brave New World. Now, I honestly should have had this review out by Sunday of the weekend it came out, because I saw it opening day, and I just wanted to make sure I had something released and sorted out within that weekend. But because of timing, because I ended up going to London and had some other job related stuff to deal with as well, I just decided, you know what, I'll wait a little bit. Just let me marinate on the film a little bit more. And funnily enough, my thoughts haven't changed that much. I think I'm still in the same mode that I was in on Friday. And again, just timing wise, I wasn't able to get it out as soon as I would like to. But as it stands, I'm just going to tell you straight up. I enjoyed this film. Brave New World wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it would be, because there were some early critic reviews that were coming out saying that this film is bad, it's the worst thing ever, Marvel have had another stinker on their hands, blah 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 blah, and so on and so forth. And I do feel like the discussion surrounding Marvel material these days is complicated. I feel like Marvel is in a similar place to Star Wars right now, where they've made a number of lukewarm to bad material in their film and television department, where it's poisoned the well to the point where most people are either done, they're willing to give them another chance and have been disappointed yet again, or it's a case where anything post Endgame has just been known as a disappointment, and they are not willing to acknowledge any of the bright spots that's come in the world of television or certain films that showed up in Phase 4. Again, I look at stuff like WandaVision, Loki, Hawkeye, Shang-Chi, Spider-Man, Far From Home. I keep saying that again. I keep saying it's No Way Home. I said the same thing to someone else the other day. This was an issue that a friend of mine brought up to me before. He was saying Far From Home when he mentioned No Way Home, and for some reason that started to fall onto my mouth whenever I start talking about that third Tom Holland movie. But yeah, again, I feel like there have been some bright spots in the sea of chaos that has been the Marvel material that's come out. But it has to be said, Marvel have been slipping recently, and I do think in some ways they just got a little too big for their britches. They decided to release too much at once, didn't really do a lot of quality control. And the amount of projects that's come out where you can tell that things were cut out, missing, or were retooled from the time that they were conceptualized to the time that they got out to the viewers on screens, whether it be on TV and film, it's messy. And it's just like, you guys weren't like this before. Why can't you just try to narrow your focus down, get things sorted? But anyway, getting back to Brave New World, I think that the film was more entertaining than I expected it to be, but it was not the slam dunk I was hoping for. I knew that there was probably going to be some issues when it came to the noted reshoots that were talked about in the news how many months ago. But I was still going off of the vibe of that first trailer, where it was giving me those perfect, nice Winter Soldier vibes, where we're getting back to political espionage with some action, and obviously seeing Harrison Ford stepping into the MCU as like a Thaddeus Ross was pretty interesting. And obviously we knew that Red Hulk was going to be in the movie as well, and the fact that they were bringing back Tim Blake Nelson as well as Liv Tyler from The Incredible Hulk many moons after 2008, I was like, okay, I want to know how this whole thing turns out. And the end result is something that is entertaining but messy. There were times where I was enjoying myself, marveling at what was on screen, especially when it came to the action, certain plot points, and there were certain themes where I'm vibing with what was happening essentially, and getting some of those connective tissue points from Falcon and Winter Soldier, the TV show, and how they brought that into this film as well. However, there were several times where I'm just like, this isn't as good as it could be. This is unnecessary. Why is this here? And again, I felt like it's complicated because I'm looking at this film and I'm seeing the potential for more. And I'm seeing a film that if it had a little bit more runtime, if it got rid of a few characters, gave more focus to some others, streamlined a couple plot elements here and there, and narrowed its focus down just a little bit more, we could have had a pretty solid movie on our hands. As it stands, it's a decent movie. I would say I had more fun with this than I did with Ant-Man 3, The Marvels, or I don't remember most of the other TV shows that came out from Marvel, save for, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, which is really good, by the way. You should watch that on Disney+. But yeah, as it stands, I would say this is still good. A cut above the other material, but at the same time, it doesn't have that sort of, how would I describe it exactly? When you leave the cinema and you feel that need to properly discuss with people, talk about how you really, really enjoyed the film and you're itching to see it again and you're curious to see what comes next. I don't feel that. I would say I am curious to see what happens afterwards, but I don't feel that immediate need to watch it again, and I don't feel that immediate need to discuss it with anybody. Not in that sort of intense way that I would have with certain other films that's come out in the past. So this review is going to be a little complicated. I would say it's going to be a little looser than most ones that I've done in the past. Obviously, I'll still be talking about story, characters, and presentation, but probably just not as focused as I usually would, just because, again, there's so much to talk about with this movie, about its ups and downs, but that would take far too long, and I only have so much time, so I'll try to, be as constructive yet as brief as I can, but there may be some tangents, so please hang in there with me. So yeah, as we continue through this review, just chill out and let's go. Alright, and now it's time to talk about the story, and it can be summed up as the following. We have this new Captain America in the form of Sam Wilson, and he finds himself in the middle of an international incident and must discover the motive behind the nefarious global plan. And that's a way for me to summarize this film without going into the area of spoilers now. The interesting thing about Brave New World is it is not only a continuation of the Captain America series that was concluded with the trilogy of films that had Chris Evans in there, but we also have it as a continuation of the Falcon and Winter Soldier miniseries on Disney+. But it is also a sequel to The Incredible Hulk from 2008, because there are certain characters and plot elements that are brought back from that film, which honestly, I thought that we'd probably go for the rest of our lives not ever getting to see any additional material from that film, because there were certain beats in there that people were wondering for years, is Marvel ever going to do anything with that? And they brought that back in a pretty notable way. And I do feel like within the plot that we got, I enjoyed how they brought back some of those elements. It was pretty cool. However, I do feel like this film was sort of clashing with itself at times, trying to not only be a sequel to not only Steve Rogers' story, well, in the sense that passing the mantle from Steve to Sam, but we also had to continue the events from Falcon and Winter Soldier and bring in these elements from the Incredible Hulk movie. And it's unlike what was done with Captain America Civil War, where I know there were some people that dubbed that film just being Avengers 2.5. And yes, there were definitely a number of the Avengers characters fighting each other in that film, but I feel like Civil War did a pretty good job of still keeping the focus on Steve and Bucky. It was all about their relationship, trying to build them back up and trying to have Steve keep Bucky safe and discover some secrets while also dealing with the extra BS that comes with the Sokovia Accords, Iron Man, and all the other characters that would be affected by that new law that was being put into place. They even introduced 2 new characters in the form of Black Panther and Spider-Man and made that work. This film doesn't as successfully take all of those key elements and bring it together in a cohesive manner. And once you are aware of the reshoots, you can definitely tell where there were certain things in the movie that was supposed to have more significance or should have been cut out entirely. There were several points in this film where I'm just thinking, well, this person didn't amount to as much as I thought they would, and this person should have had more screen time, and this plot beat should have, probably not been in the movie. It would have been like no difference if it was removed, or this needed a few more times to, a few more minutes or a few more moments just for it to resonate with me a little bit more, because this film is attempting to have certain emotional beats, take certain plot points from previous films and give them relevance again. And at times, some of it works. And again, if you're talking about the material taken from Falcon and Winter Soldier, especially when it comes to Sam, Isaiah, and Joaquin, there's a lot of really cool stuff going on between those guys that's good. And there's also some pretty interesting stuff with Thaddeus Ross being the president now, where him and Sam, especially considering the nature of their relationship from Civil War going into this film as well, there are some interesting plot beats and themes going on there. And I'm like, I'm vibing with all this. But then there's other stuff with, certain new elements in the film, which again, I can't talk about because that's spoiler specific, essentially. I'm watching this and I'm just like, yeah, I mean, I can see what you're trying to do, but this isn't executed nearly as well as it should be. And while I enjoy the espionage and thriller-based elements, not knowing who to trust and having Sam deal with this, new responsibility of being, the Captain America that has to save the world in the same way that Steve does, but also trying to navigate it as his own sort of individual way of taking on that moniker. Again, so many interesting things. Just the execution was not quite there. And one of the other things that felt a little off about the movie was the humor. Now, Marvel films have been known for their humor straight from the outset with Iron Man. But I would say towards the side of maybe phase 3, some of that humor definitely started to irk me a little bit, where I'm just like, your humor is not necessary in these moments, and it just feels like it's in there just to be one of those hallmarks of a Marvel film. Marvel films have been funny before, let's just add humor here, and I'm just like, no, you don't need that. And phase 4 definitely started to take that a little crazy, and phase 5, yeah, things happened. And the TV shows definitely fluctuated in that department as well. With this film, the humor was definitely a lot more subtle than it was before, and wasn't as overbearing. But even with some of the humor that was coming from certain characters at times, it just felt a little meh. I don't know, just whether it was just due to bad timing or execution, or if it was just the writing. I feel like it might be more the writing, but there were times where humor happened in this film, and I'm just like, okay, that was a thing, I guess. I don't know, maybe I'm just being harsh on it. And again, I am infamous for being kind of fickle when it comes to humor in films in general. But yeah, I just felt like the humor was a bit off. And by the time this film ended, I was still curious to see where, the series would go ahead, especially when it comes to the next Captain America film. But also kind of curious to see what kind of implications this has for the MCU at large. Not in a, oh my God, I need to know what's happening in the next MCU episode, but it's more so that I'm just like, okay, you've established this, that, and the other here. I'm wondering how you are going to try and execute that in a way that makes sense, not only for the MCU, but for also certain other characters going ahead. But I will also say the post-credit scene for this film, bearing in mind there's only one, no mid-credits, just the end credits, and it was very uneventful. Just a very big nothing to me. And I've stayed for so many of these things, and I've normally been not too disappointed. I mean, there have been, I'd say, possibly at least 5, but less than 10 MCU post-credits where I'm just like, this is a big nothing. But this might be the worst one I've seen for a while, just because I get the implication, but then at the same time, just like, did this really need to be all the way at the end? It felt like such a wet fart, man. Alright, and now it's time to talk about the cast, and I think that they all did a pretty decent job, though some people definitely stood out more so than others. I would say the best people that came out of the cast was Anthony Mackie, Harrison Ford, and Carl Lumley. Now, Anthony Mackie has always oozed charisma since the time that he showed up in the MCU back in 2014, and I feel like he's definitely brought that to this film as well. This is a film about Sam Wilson's journey to continue being this source of inspiration for the people and realizing the gravity of what it is to be Captain America. Now, obviously, he took on that title in the Falcon and Winter Soldier TV show, but this film is definitely about him, just accepting some of the scenarios that he's in and realizing that there's so much more danger and chaos and difficult situations for him to navigate, not only as an individual, but also other people who, rely on him for help, or certain people that he could make enemies depending on how certain boards on the chess how certain pieces on the chessboard move around, because obviously as a superhero in this world of all these other different stakes and humans and governments, there are various different things happening, and you just have to sort of be prepared for all types of scenarios. And it was enjoyable seeing how Sam had to navigate that and speak to certain individuals, for help, or just trying to figure things out on his own. And again, Mackey's good. He's really fun, and I just enjoyed seeing him in this film. He did a pretty good job in his role. And I would say I really liked Harrison Ford as Thaddeus Ross. I was curious to see how Ford would take on the role, considering how well William Hurt did the role for how many years in his various appearances. But he brought his own unique flavor to the role. Thaddeus Ross in this film, you can tell there's definitely some of that William Hurt energy in there in terms of how he used to conduct himself. But Thaddeus Ross, he's changed a fair bit, because now that he's the president of the United States, he has to conduct himself in a different way. And while certain things have changed, you can see that there are still flares of that old military side of him that come into play. And with the assassination attempt on his life at the time and some of the other things going on, you can see that he's also on edge, not entirely thinking straight, but at the same time also trying to be preventative of certain other things. So he wants certain things to happen, but he also knows that he has to make some difficult decisions, and this means butting heads with a number of people, including Sam Wilson. And Ford is great. I love to see Ford when he's in things where he's actually trying. And don't get me wrong, I mean, when it comes to actors, when they get to a certain age, you can do whatever you want. You can phone it in, or you can, try. It's not my place to judge you, but at the same time, it's always nice to see when there is an attempt to, throw yourself into a role and commit. And this, along with seeing him in Shrinking, which, is that show on Apple TV, which is really good, by the way. I'm just enjoying seeing at least some fire in his belly when he's doing some of this stuff. And some of his performance is pretty funny. I think some of it intentional and some of it not intentional. But again, it's the fact that he's diving into this role and then obviously showing that bigger, hulky side of himself. And that shows up in the film as well. He was good. I just enjoyed him a lot, especially with his back and forth with Anthony Mackie and Carl Lumley as Isaiah Bradley. That dude is precious. I love that man. He was my favorite part of the Falcon and Winter Soldier TV show by a country mile. And he brings back that same sort of energy. Isaiah Bradley, he has gone through a lot in his time, considering the fact that he was this OG super soldier for ages who was incarcerated, experimented on, and had all this other chaos going on with him. And the fact that he's still, adjusting to this world now where Sam is the new Captain America. But, still has his apprehensions on, how certain powers above will be treating him and how certain things may play out. He had a really good part to play in here. And again, there was so much good stuff he was doing with his physicality and, the emotional acting. There was so much stuff he did with his face. Lumley is so good. And I love him. He makes me happy. I would love to shake that man's hand and just be like, yo, man, you're making me feel things. Thank you. But yeah, the rest of the cast after that are pretty decent. I would say Danny Ramirez as Joaquin Torres, aka the new Falcon. He was decent. I liked his, previous appearance in the Falcon and Winter Soldier TV show. And while I feel like some of his humor was just I don't know about that. But otherwise, he was good. And I would say Giancarlo Esposito as Sidewinder. He was fun. I mean, Esposito just has this beautiful screen presence whenever he shows up. It's just a good time, I just wish there was more of him. It felt like there was more for him to do in this film, and he just wasn't around nearly as much as I'd like. Everybody else in the film was just okay, or I would like to speak about them, but they exist in the spoiler-based territory, so I cannot. And then it comes to the presentation. I would say action-wise, this film is good. I do like the sense of scope, especially when it came to some of the action sequences towards the end of the film when we were flying around that, celestial being that's like, popped out of the side of the earth that Marvel reminded everybody existed since Eternals. And because obviously Sam Wilson is flying around with his suit with the wings that was provided by Wakanda, along with the shield, he fights in a very different way than Captain America. And I thought that his action scenes were good. There was definitely some creative uses of the shield and wings. And seeing him team up with Joaquin for certain sequences was fun. And certain battles towards the end of the film were pretty kick-ass. But I would say that action-wise, it still didn't have that pizzazz or super wow factor. Now, obviously, it can't be expected that you can do, the greatest of action scenes every time in every film. But I do feel like there was something about the way that some of the action was shot when it came to some of the cinematography. It just didn't look nearly as exciting as it could have been. And when it comes to some of the CG, I would say the visuals were mostly on point, but there were at least a few moments where I'm just like, this looks a little blurrier than I'd like. Looks like it needs a little bit more polish here and there. But again, I wouldn't say it was anything offensively bad. I would just say just not 100% polished as it could be. But then there's the music, and that's where I feel like this film wasn't nearly as good as it could have been. Now, I was trying to place it for a little while because I'm like, this film feels like its new score is trying to emulate the sounds of what came before with the previous two entries, but it's definitely trying to create its own new sound. And I was looking at the credits just trying to figure out who made this sound. And then I saw that it was Laura Karpman. Now, Laura's work, I was trying to pinpoint, I've known her name to be in the MCU before, but I just couldn't tell. And then I realized, she was the person that worked on the Marvels. I'm like, oh, okay, so that now I understand why this film score wasn't saying much to me. She also worked on Miss Marvel as well. And again, the score wasn't saying much. So I don't want to crap on Laura's work too much because she definitely created a sound that was probably the most memorable of any of the projects she's worked on so far. But it is a far cry from what was done with Henry Jackman in Winter Soldier and Civil War. Jackman is definitely one of my favorite film composers. He has a way of eliciting certain emotions from me, and his sounds are cool, they're intense, mysterious, crafty, and he can always create these sort of intense sounds where he can get the drama out of certain scenes or uplift you or give you that sort of heroic, this is a good ass scenario, things are happening. But this is no Henry Jackman material, unfortunately. And I was hopeful that he would come back, considering that he worked on, again, the previous two Captain America films and the Falcon and Winter Soldier TV show. But as it stands, Laura Karpman's work on this was okay at best, but nothing really memorable for me. So as it stands, Captain America Brave New World is a good film, but again, it's messy. I feel like I still had a good time for the most part, and I can see some people listening to this podcast and saying, I'm making excuses. Why don't you just say that you hate the movie? It's a terrible film. What are you talking about? And I cannot agree with that. It took me a while after my college years and probably into uni to find a way to properly discuss films in a way where I could be open about not only my opinion, but also realize that there are things you can like, but also criticize at the same time. And there's also things that you can dislike, but still find ways to talk about the positives in them. And I feel like this is a film where there are things that I definitely did not like or had issues with, but I could still enjoy the film as an overall project. I feel, again, some people are blowing the negative nature of this film way out of proportion, like it's a flaming turd on their, doorstep that they had to put out with their feet, and now they're angry that they got poop on their shoes. That is not this film. Brave New World definitely has its bright spots, especially when it comes to the performances of the main cast, the action, and continuing again those themes and conversation pieces from Falcon and Winter Soldier and some of the previous Captain America films as well. Again, it has issues, ain't no doubt about it, but I would say this is definitely a cut above the other Marvel content. But as it stands now, again, this is a mark in the okay territory of MCU material, and we need to do better. I'm hoping that after this film in particular, moving towards Fantastic Four and Thunderbolts, they have at least addressed some of these issues that we've been dealing with, and there's like at least a clearer, more cohesive story that we'll get out of those films. Thunderbolts could go either way for me. I like some of those characters, but I'm not as interested in this film as some other people are. Some people say, oh yeah man, it's such a unique and interesting kind of thing, it's going to be so cool. And I'm like, it could be, we'll see. But I'm more interested in like Fantastic Four. This is the third time, or technically fourth time if you count the Roger Corman film, where we're going to get these guys in live action again. We've had two Incredibles films and they did it better than they did, so we need this to work. I need this to work, because if the Fantastic Four can't be saved, then we're in trouble, in true trouble. But anyway, we'll cross that road when we get to it in July. So now I turn it over to you, ladies and gentlemen. What did you think of Captain America Brave New World? Did you like it, dislike it, or hate it? Tell me your thoughts in the comment section below, or hit me up on Twitter where I'm at Hypersonic55 or at FilmFocus55. I'm also on that Blue Sky as well, mostly as Hypersonic55. So if you do have any thoughts about the podcast, just send them to me there. Obviously, check out the Facebook and Instagram accounts, and what was the other thing? Yeah, check out the YouTube account, because the podcast is on there, and I would appreciate a subscription and some likes, please. But yeah, do what you want, it's your life. Anyway, that's me done for now. Thank you for listening as always, and until the next time, this is the Hypersonic 55 signing out. Peace.